Here's a question that sounds strange at first. Did women in ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, or prehistoric times get breast cancer? We tend to think of cancer as a modern disease, something caused by processed food, pollution, and sedentary lifestyles. But the answer is more complicated and, honestly, more fascinating than most people expect. Let's start with what we actually know. The oldest written description of breast cancer dates back to around 1600 BCE. An Egyptian medical document called the Edwin Smith Papyrus describes bulging tumors on the breast and then simply states there is no treatment. That's it. No cure, no ritual. Just a quiet acknowledgement that this thing exists and there's nothing to be done about it. Whoever wrote that was describing something they had seen before. This wasn't a new disease in 1600 BCE. It was already familiar enough to document. So yes, ancient women got breast cancer. But the more interesting question is how often and why that matters so much today. Finding cancer in ancient remains is genuinely difficult. Cancer is a disease of soft tissue. When a body has been dead for thousands of years, the soft tissue is gone. What remains is bone, and breast cancer doesn't always spread to bone. When it does, it leaves behind specific patterns, abnormal growths and lesions that forensic specialists can identify. Researchers have found these markers in remains across Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Not commonly, but consistently enough to confirm that breast cancer existed throughout recorded history. There's also the biological argument, and this one is airtight. Breast cancer is fundamentally a disease of cell division. Cells divide, mutations happen, and sometimes those mutations spiral out of control. This process is ancient. It's been happening in mammalian bodies for millions of years. Researchers have found evidence of cancer in dinosaur fossils, in ancient shark vertebrae, in the bones of our hominin ancestors. The body's tendency to produce malignant cells is not a modern invention. It's a feature, or rather a flaw, built into the basic machinery of life. But here's where it gets complicated. Ancient women almost certainly had lower rates of breast cancer than women today. Not because ancient life was healthier in the way we romanticize, but because of something specific, reproductive patterns. For most of human history, women had their first pregnancy in their teens. They breastfed for years. They had multiple pregnancies throughout their lives. They also had shorter overall lifespans, which matters because breast cancer risk rises sharply with age. Each of these factors, early pregnancy, extended breastfeeding, and earlier death, reduced lifetime exposure to estrogen. And estrogen is a key driver of the most common forms of breast cancer. A woman in ancient Rome who had her first child at 15, breastfed for 2 years, had 6 more pregnancies, and died at 45, had a fundamentally different hormonal history than a modern woman who has her first child at 32, breastfeeds briefly, and lives to 80. The biology of breast cancer isn't just about what you eat or what chemicals you encounter. It's about how many menstrual cycles your breast tissue has been exposed to over a lifetime. Ancient women had far fewer. This doesn't mean ancient life was good for women. It wasn't. Childbirth killed them. Infection killed them. Malnutrition killed them. The lower rates of breast cancer weren't a triumph. They were a side effect of lives that were brutal and short. There's another layer here that researchers are still unraveling. Ancient people were also exposed to far fewer synthetic chemicals. No plastics, no industrial pollutants, no endocrine-disrupting compounds in their food supply. Modern research increasingly links certain environmental exposures to elevated breast cancer risk. Ancient women didn't have those. That probably mattered too. What ancient women did have was limited access to diagnosis. A lump in the breast in ancient Egypt was either ignored, treated with herbal remedies that did nothing, or acknowledged the way the Edwin Smith Papyrus acknowledged it, with resignation. There were no mammograms, no biopsies, no distinction between benign and malignant. Many women who had breast cancer never knew what they had. They died from it without a name for it. So the picture that emerges is this. Breast cancer has existed as long as mammals have existed. Ancient women got it, suffered from it, and died from it. They just got it less often than women do today, for reasons tied to reproduction, lifespan, and environment. The disease itself is ancient. The epidemic is modern. And that last part is worth sitting with. Breast cancer rates have risen dramatically over the last century. Some of that is better detection. But not all of it. The way modern life has restructured female biology, delaying childbirth, shortening breastfeeding, extending lifespans, flooding the environment with novel chemicals, has created conditions where an ancient disease thrives at a scale it never did before. Ancient women couldn't treat breast cancer. Modern women can. But in a cruel twist, modern life has made sure far more of them have to.